Admiral Elena Vasquez stood before the massive holographic display in the command center of Luna Station, watching the last transmission from Kepler 442b replay for the 100th time. The blue-green world hung suspended in three-dimensional light, its twin moons casting ethereal shadows across continents that had been home to 12 million human colonists just 72 hours ago. Now it was silent. "Show me the attack sequence again," she commanded, her voice cutting through the ambient hum of the station's quantum processors. The hologram shifted, displaying the orbital monitoring data from the moments before contact was lost. Vast, organic-looking vessels had emerged from subspace, technology that humanity's greatest scientists had declared theoretically impossible. The ships moved with fluid grace, like deep-sea creatures rising from oceanic trenches, their surfaces rippling with bioluminescent patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. 47 vessels, reported Commander Chenwei, the station's chief intelligence officer. His augmented eyes flickered with data streams as he accessed the collective analysis from every monitoring station in the sector. Each one approximately 3 kilometers in length, constructed from materials our sensors cannot fully identify. They appeared simultaneously at coordinates that should have been monitored by our early warning systems. Elena's neural implants processed the tactical data instantaneously. The technology she carried in her skull was the culmination of 6 centuries of human advancement, quantum processing cores that could simulate 1,000,000 battle scenarios in milliseconds, sensory enhancement modules that could detect electromagnetic signatures across vast distances, and memory banks that stored the collected military knowledge of Earth's greatest strategic minds. Yet none of it had predicted this. "Any response from the planetary defense grid?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Negative. The alien vessels transmitted some form of electromagnetic pulse that disabled our quantum communication networks before our forces could coordinate a response. The last coherent message we received was from Governor Martinez, requesting immediate military assistance." Elena closed her eyes, accessing her neural archives to review everything humanity knew about Kepler 442b. The colony had been established in 2547, one of the crown jewels of the Outer Rim expansion project. Its Earth-like atmosphere and abundant natural resources had made it a perfect candidate for terraforming enhancement. By 2584, it housed research facilities that pushed the boundaries of human knowledge, zero-point energy research, consciousness transfer experiments, and the controversial Project Prometheus, which sought to unlock the genetic potential that lay dormant in human DNA. "Ma'am," interrupted Lieutenant Sarah Kim, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. "We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. The Unified Council is convening an emergency session." The holographic display shifted to show the familiar chamber of the Unified Earth Council, where representatives from every human world gathered in both physical and virtual presence. Elena recognized many of the faces, political leaders who had guided humanity through its greatest age of expansion, scientists who had unlocked the secrets of faster-than-light travel, and military commanders who had secured the peace that had lasted for over 2 centuries. At the center of the assembly stood Chancellor Rebecca Harrison, her silver hair gleaming under the chamber's lights. Harrison had been the driving force behind humanity's technological renaissance, the architect of the colonial charter that had established settlements on over 300 worlds across a 50-light-year radius. "Admiral Vasquez?" Harrison's voice carried across space instantaneously through quantum entanglement communicators. "We need your assessment. Is this an isolated incident, or are we looking at the beginning of something larger?" Elena stepped forward, her uniform automatically adjusting its molecular structure to present a crisp, professional appearance for the interstellar transmission. "Chancellor, based on the tactical data we've analyzed, this was a coordinated strike by an unknown alien civilization. The technology they employed suggests capabilities that exceed our current understanding of physics. They bypassed our detection networks, neutralized our defenses, and achieved complete communications blackout in less than 6 minutes." Murmurs rippled through the council chamber. For nearly 3 centuries, humanity had searched for signs of intelligent life beyond Earth. The discovery of thousands of habitable worlds had yielded abundant flora and fauna, but no civilization that had achieved technological sophistication. Many had begun to believe that humanity was alone in the galaxy. That belief had just been shattered. "What are your recommendations, Admiral?" asked General Morrison, the head of Colonial Defense Forces. His weathered face bore the scars of the resource wars that had ended in 2387, the last major conflict in human history. Elena activated her neural implants, accessing strategic simulations that had been running continuously since the attack. "We need to assume that Kepler 442b was a test, a probe to assess our defensive capabilities. If that's the case, they now know that our individual colony defenses can be overwhelmed by coordinated assault. We need to mobilize the fleet immediately and establish defensive perimeters around our core worlds." "The fleet," Morrison repeated slowly. "Admiral, we're talking about vessels that were designed for exploration and scientific research. Humanity has been at peace for 200 years. Our military capabilities are limited." Elena's expression hardened. "Then we need to change that. Quickly." Chancellor Harrison leaned forward in her chair. "What exactly are you proposing, Admiral?" "We implement the Kepler Protocol." Silence fell over the council chamber. The Kepler Protocol was a theoretical military strategy that had been developed in the early days of colonial expansion, a worst-case scenario plan for defending human civilization against an existential threat. It had remained buried in classified archives, considered by most to be an unnecessary relic of humanity's more paranoid past. The Kepler Protocol was designed for defending against human adversaries, objected Dr. Morgan Way, the head of the Colonial Science Council. "We have no idea what we're dealing with here. For all we know, this could be a misunderstanding. Perhaps these aliens were defending their territory, and we inadvertently established our colony in their space." Elena called up a three-dimensional map of the local galactic region, highlighting the positions of human colonies. "Dr. Way, Kepler 442b has been under continuous observation for 47 years. Our deep space monitoring arrays detected no signs of alien presence in that system. Either these beings have technology so advanced that they can remain completely undetected for decades, or they came from outside our monitored space." She manipulated the holographic display to show theoretical travel routes. "If they came from outside our monitored region, that suggests they have faster-than-light capabilities that exceed our own. Our quantum tunneling drives can achieve approximately 15 times the speed of light. For them to reach Kepler 442b from unmonitored space and coordinate such a precise attack, they would need to be traveling at least 50 times light speed." The implications hung heavy in the air. Humanity's technological advancement had been steady and exponential, but it had always been limited by the fundamental laws of physics as they understood them. If these aliens possessed technology that could casually exceed those limitations, humanity was facing an enemy with capabilities that bordered on the incomprehensible. "There's something else," Elena continued, her voice dropping to a more somber tone. "Our long-range sensors are detecting similar subspace disturbances near 3 other colony systems, Proxima Centauri b, Wolf 359c, and Gliese 667cc. If these are reconnaissance missions, we could be looking at simultaneous attacks across multiple fronts." Chancellor Harrison stood, her face grave. "Admiral, I'm authorizing the implementation of the Kepler Protocol. You'll have complete authority over all military assets and the cooperation of every colonial government. How long do you need to mobilize our forces?" Elena's neural implants rapidly calculated logistics scenarios, ship movements, resource allocation, personnel deployment, and manufacturing timelines. "With full authorization, I can have the core battle fleet assembled at the Titan shipyards within 48 hours. Complete mobilization of our defensive capabilities will take approximately 2 weeks." "You have it," Harrison declared. "And Admiral, find out what happened to our people on Kepler 442b. Chapter 2: The Memory of Marcus Flynn. Dr. Marcus Flynn awoke to the sound of his own screaming. He lay in darkness, his body racked with pain that seemed to emanate from every nerve ending simultaneously. As consciousness slowly returned, fragments of memory began to coalesce. The research facility, the attack, The impossible ships that had appeared in Kepler 442b's sky like nightmares made manifest. Marcus tried to move and discovered that he was restrained, his arms and legs secured to what felt like a bioorganic surface that pulsed with a rhythm reminiscent of a heartbeat. The air around him was humid and carried an alien scent, something like ozone mixed with the ocean depths. "You are awake," a voice said in perfect standard Terran, though the pronunciation carried an undertone that seemed to resonate in frequencies just below human hearing. Marcus turned his head and saw them for the first time. The being standing before him was humanoid in basic structure but utterly alien in its details. Its skin appeared to be a living fabric that shifted between deep blue and silver, marked with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in complex sequences. Where a human would have hair, it bore sensory appendages that moved with independent awareness, constantly sampling the environment. Its eyes were larger than human proportions would suggest, and they held an intelligence that was undeniably ancient. "My name is Three-Nod-Ka," the being continued. "I am what you might call a researcher, though the concepts do not translate precisely. You are Dr. Marcus Flynn, age 43 standard years, specialist in consciousness transfer technology." Marcus tried to speak but found his throat raw and unresponsive. The alien noticed his struggle and made a gesture with one hand. Immediately, Marcus felt moisture return to his mouth and throat. "How?" he managed to croak. "How do you know that?" Three-Nod-Ka moved closer, and Marcus could see that its movements were unlike anything human, fluid and organic, as if the being's body operated on principles of motion that transcended traditional biomechanics. "We have been observing your species for what you would measure as several of your centuries," it explained. "Your expansion into the galaxy proceeded exactly as our predictive models suggested it would. We have watched your technological development, studied your social structures, and analyzed your genetic potential." Genetic potential? Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ambient temperature. The alien's pattern shifted to what might have been amusement. "Your species possesses dormant capabilities that you have only recently begun to understand. The neural implants you use, the consciousness transfer experiments, the genetic enhancement projects, all of these represent primitive attempts to access abilities that are naturally present in your evolutionary code." Marcus's mind raced. His work on Project Prometheus had indeed suggested that human consciousness was capable of far more than previously understood. The quantum resonance patterns they had discovered in advanced meditation subjects indicated that human awareness could potentially interface directly with subatomic reality. But they had never achieved more than theoretical breakthroughs. "What do you want?" he asked. "Cooperation," Three-Nod-Ka replied simply. "Your species has reached a critical point in its development. You stand at the threshold of becoming something far more than what you currently are. However, your progress is unguided, random. You lack the wisdom to use the capabilities you are unlocking." The alien gestured, and the wall behind it became transparent, revealing a vast chamber filled with crystalline structures that hummed with energy. Within each crystal, Marcus could see the suspended forms of other humans, colonists from Kepler 442b, he realized with growing horror. "We have preserved your people," Three-Nod-Ka explained. "They are not harmed, merely contained while we study them. We seek to understand how your consciousness interfaces with reality at the quantum level. Your research into consciousness transfer provides a unique window into this process." Marcus struggled against his restraints. "You attacked our colony. 12 million people are safe," the alien interrupted. "Though their current form of existence is admittedly different from what they are accustomed to. We required living subjects to study, and your species has proven remarkably adaptable to our preservation methods. This is insane. You can't just abduct an entire colony for research purposes." Three-Nod-Ka's patterns shifted to what Marcus interpreted as mild confusion. "Your species regularly conducts research on lower life forms without considering their consent. We are conducting research on your species, which from our perspective occupies a similar position relative to our own development. The ethical framework is identical." The comparison stung because of its inherent logic. Marcus had spent his career studying consciousness through experimentation on various subjects, often without considering the broader implications of his research. Now he found himself on the other side of the equation. "What makes you think we'll cooperate with you?" he asked. "Because the alternative is extinction," Threenoddka replied with chilling matter-of-factness. "Your species is approaching capabilities that, without proper guidance, will result in your complete destruction. We have observed this pattern in 14 previous civilizations across this galactic region. All of them developed consciousness-altering technology without understanding its implications. All of them ceased to exist." Marcus felt the weight of the alien's words settling over him like a burial shroud. "And you're offering to guide us?" "We are offering to prevent your species from making the same mistakes as those who came before. However, this requires understanding how your consciousness operates at the fundamental level. Your cooperation in this research would be beneficial to all parties involved." "And if we refuse?" Threenoddka's patterns went still, and for a moment its alien features seemed almost sad. "Then we will study you regardless, and your species will remain on its current trajectory towards self-destruction. The choice is whether you participate willingly in your own preservation, or whether we proceed without your consent." Marcus closed his eyes, trying to process what he was hearing. Everything he had known about humanity's place in the universe had been overturned in the span of minutes. They were not alone, they were not the most advanced intelligence in the galaxy, and their entire civilization was apparently balanced on the edge of extinction. "There's something you need to understand," he said finally. "Humans don't respond well to coercion. Even if you're trying to help us, the way you've gone about this, attacking our colony, abducting our people, that's going to trigger a military response. My species has a long history of fighting against impossible odds." "Yes," Threenoddka agreed. "We have observed this aspect of your nature. It is one of the factors that makes your species particularly interesting. Most civilizations, when confronted with clearly superior force, submit immediately. Your species appears incapable of submission, even when continued resistance is clearly futile. Then you understand why this approach won't work." The alien was quiet for a long moment, its sensory appendages weaving through the air in complex patterns. "Perhaps," it said finally, "there is another way." Chapter 3: The Arsenal of Tomorrow. The Titan shipyards had not seen activity like this since the great colonial expansion of the 25th century. Massive construction platforms stretched across the moon's lower orbit, each one surrounded by swarms of automated builders working around the clock to retrofit humanity's exploration fleet for war. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood in the command center of the USS Prometheus, the flagship of what had once been called the Scientific Survey Fleet, and was now being rapidly reorganized as the first colonial defense armada. Through the massive viewport, she could see the skeletal framework of new weapon systems being integrated into ships that had been designed for peaceful exploration. "Status report," she called to her assembled staff officers. Commander James Harrison, the Chancellor's nephew and one of the youngest tactical officers to achieve his rank, stepped forward with a holographic display. "Ma'am, we've successfully integrated quantum disruption cannons into 47 vessels. The new targeting systems are still calibrating, but our simulations suggest we can achieve effective fire coordination across the entire fleet." Elena nodded, though she couldn't shake her concern about the weapons they were deploying. Quantum disruption technology had been developed for asteroid mining and planetary construction projects. The ability to destabilize matter at the subatomic level was extraordinarily useful for reshaping raw materials. Turning that same technology into a weapon of war represented a fundamental shift in humanity's relationship with the universe. "What about the defensive systems?" she asked. "That's where we've made our most significant breakthrough," replied Dr. Sarah Kim, who had been promoted from her position on Luna Station to serve as the fleet's chief science officer. "The new quantum shielding can create localized distortions in space-time that should deflect incoming energy weapons. We've also developed something we're calling probability armor. It uses quantum uncertainty principles to make our ships exist in multiple probable locations simultaneously." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Explain that in terms a career military officer can understand." Dr. Kim smiled nervously. "Essentially, ma'am, our ships will be partially phased out of normal reality. Enemy weapons will have only a percentage chance of actually striking us, determined by quantum probability calculations. In practical terms, it should make us extremely difficult to target effectively. And the risks? Well, Dr. Kim hesitated. There's a small chance that a ship using probability armor could phase out of reality entirely and become unrecoverable. Also, prolonged use appears to have psychological effects on the crew. Something about existing in multiple probability states simultaneously seems to affect human consciousness in ways we don't fully understand. Elena filed that information away for later consideration. Everything they were doing involved technologies that had never been tested under combat conditions, wielded by military personnel who had trained for scenarios that no longer applied to their situation. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. "We're receiving a priority transmission from the Deep Space Monitoring Array at Alpha Centauri. They're detecting subspace disturbances consistent with the readings we observed before the Kepler 442b attack." Elena felt her stomach tighten. "Where?" "Multiple locations, ma'am. It looks like they're positioning for simultaneous strikes against Proxima Centauri b, Wolf 359c, Gliese 667cc, and—" Torres paused, his face going pale. "Earth." The command center fell silent. An attack on the colony worlds was one thing, a devastating blow to human expansion, but something the species could potentially recover from. An attack on Earth itself would be an extinction-level event. "Time to arrival?" Elena asked, her voice steady despite the ice forming in her veins. "Based on the progression of subspace disturbances, approximately 18 hours to the outer colony systems, 26 hours to Earth." Elena activated her neural implants, accessing strategic databases and running tactical simulations. 26 hours to prepare for a battle that would determine whether humanity continued to exist as a free species. It wasn't enough time, but it was the time they had. "Send immediate orders to all fleet commanders," she said. "Full mobilization of every combat-capable vessel. I want the home defense fleet positioned between Earth and the most likely approach vectors. Colonial defense forces are to evacuate non-essential personnel from the targeted worlds and prepare for siege conditions." "Ma'am," Commander Harrison interjected, "our analysis suggests we should concentrate our forces. If we spread the fleet across multiple systems, we won't have sufficient firepower to defend any of them effectively." Elena considered this. It was sound tactical thinking: concentrate force at the point of greatest strategic importance, and accept losses elsewhere in order to maintain the core of human civilization. But there was something about the alien strategy that bothered her. "No," she said finally. "They're not trying to conquer our territory, they're trying to capture our people. The attack on Kepler 442b wasn't about destroying the colony, it was about taking the entire population intact. If they wanted to exterminate us, they could have simply obliterated the planet from orbit." "Then what do you think they want?" asked Dr. Kim. Elena pulled up the holographic display showing human space, marking the locations of the impending attacks. "They want specimens. Living subjects for whatever research they're conducting. The question is, why these specific colonies?" She manipulated the display to highlight the unique characteristics of each targeted world. Proxima Centauri b hosted the largest consciousness research facility outside of Earth. Wolf 359c was home to the most advanced genetic enhancement programs. Gliese 667cc housed the experimental neural implant development centers. And Earth. Earth has the largest population of enhanced humans, she realized aloud. People with advanced neural implants, genetic modifications, consciousness expansion treatments. They're not randomly selecting targets. They're specifically going after our most technologically advanced populations. The implications were staggering. If the aliens were studying human consciousness and technological enhancement, they were essentially conducting research on the future of the human species. Every person they captured represented not just individual lives, but the collective knowledge and capabilities that would determine humanity's evolutionary path. "Change the deployment strategy," Elena ordered. "We're not trying to defend territory, We're trying to prevent abduction. I want every ship equipped with quantum tunneling devices set to emergency evacuation protocols. If we can't stop them from taking our colonies, we'll make sure they get empty worlds instead of populated ones. Admiral, Dr. Kim said quietly, there are over 2 billion people on the targeted worlds. Even with our most advanced evacuation protocols, we can't move that many people in less than a day. Elena stared at the holographic display, watching as probability calculations painted grim scenarios across the three-dimensional map. Every simulation ended the same way, massive loss of life, with the aliens achieving at least partial success in their apparent goal of harvesting human subjects. Unless… Dr. Kim, she said slowly, how quickly can we deploy the consciousness transfer technology on a planetary scale? I'm sorry, ma'am? Project Prometheus was working on large-scale consciousness transfer, the ability to upload human awareness into quantum storage matrices. If we can't evacuate the bodies, can we evacuate the minds? Dr. Kim's eyes widened as she grasped the implications. Theoretically, yes. But the infrastructure requirements would be enormous, and we've never tested the technology on more than a few subjects at a time. There's no guarantee that consciousness could be successfully restored after transfer. But it's possible? It's possible. Elena made her decision. Send word to every major population center on the targeted worlds. Begin immediate construction of planetary-scale consciousness transfer networks. If the aliens want to study human consciousness, we'll give them empty shells while keeping the actual minds safely stored in quantum matrices. Ma'am, Commander Harrison said, you're talking about essentially killing 2 billion people in the hope that we can bring them back later. Elena met his gaze steadily. No, Commander. I'm talking about saving 2 billion people by temporarily moving them to a different form of existence. It's not ideal, but it's better than letting them become laboratory subjects for an alien intelligence. She turned back to the holographic display, watching as her fleet continued its frantic preparations. In less than a day, humanity would face its first interstellar war. The outcome would determine not just whether the human species survived, but what form that survival would take. Begin implementation immediately, she ordered. And pray that we're making the right choice. Chapter 4: The Weight of Choices. Dr. Marcus Flynn had been moved to a different chamber, one that offered a clearer view of the alien vessel's vast interior. Through the bioorganic walls, he could see levels upon levels of crystalline chambers, each containing suspended human forms. The scale was overwhelming. There had to be thousands of people preserved throughout the ship. Threenod Ka had visited him regularly over what Marcus estimated to be the last 2 days, each conversation revealing more about the aliens' perspective on humanity and their own civilization. The beings called themselves the Kethvar, which roughly translated to those who guide the awakening. They claimed to be one of several species in the galaxy that had achieved what they termed consciousness transcendence, the ability to directly manipulate reality through focused mental effort. Your species is unique, Threenod Ka explained during their latest session. Most life forms that achieve technological sophistication do so through external manipulation of their environment. They build tools, machines, cities. The path to transcendence for such species typically involves gradually replacing their biological forms with artificial constructs until they become purely technological entities. Marcus watched the alien's bioluminescent patterns shift as it spoke. The light displays seemed to convey emotional or conceptual undertones that the spoken words couldn't fully express. But humans are different, he asked. Fundamentally different. Your species appears to be developing consciousness-based technology, tools that amplify and extend the natural capabilities of your awareness rather than replacing them. Your neural implants, your quantum tunneling drives, even your weapons systems, all of them rely on conscious interface with quantum mechanical principles. Marcus nodded slowly. It was true that human technology had evolved in that direction, though he never considered it as distinct from how other species might develop. And this makes us interesting to you because consciousness-based development typically leads to transcendence without the loss of biological identity. Species that follow this path retain their essential nature while gaining capabilities that seem impossible to those still bound by physical limitations. Threnodka gestured, and the wall became transparent again, revealing not the crystalline chambers but the space outside the vessel. Marcus gasped as he saw the full scope of the alien fleet, hundreds of ships, each one a living organism that pulsed with its own bioluminescent rhythms. But more shocking than their number was their destination. Earth hung before them like a blue marble, its familiar continents clearly visible beneath swirling clouds. "We've reached Sol System?" Marcus asked, his voice tight with fear. "We arrived several hours ago. Your species' defensive fleet has taken positions around your homeworld, though their formations suggest they do not fully understand the nature of our capabilities." Marcus could see the human ships arrayed in defensive formations, sleek vessels that represented the pinnacle of human engineering, dwarfed by the alien bioships like minnows surrounding whales. "You're going to attack Earth," he said, the reality hitting him like a physical blow. "That depends," Threnodka replied, "on your species' willingness to cooperate with our research objectives. What exactly are you asking for?" The alien moved closer, its sensory appendages weaving complex patterns in the air. "We want to establish joint research facilities where human and HFY scientists can work together to safely guide your species' consciousness development. In exchange, we would share advanced technologies that would accelerate your civilization's growth by several millennia." Marcus felt a cynical laugh escape his lips. "And if we refuse? Then we will conduct our research independently, using the subjects we have already collected. Your species will continue its current development trajectory, which our models indicate has a 97% probability of resulting in extinction within the next 50 standard years." "Extinction from what?" Threnodka's patterns shifted to what Marcus had learned indicated deep concern. "Consciousness transcendence is not without risks. When a species gains the ability to directly manipulate reality through mental effort, individual psychological instabilities can have catastrophic effects on the physical world. Without proper training and cultural preparation, the first generation of transcendent individuals typically destroys their entire civilization through uncontrolled reality manipulation." The implications sent a chill through Marcus. His work on Project Prometheus had indeed suggested that human consciousness was developing capabilities that bordered on reality manipulation. If individuals with such abilities lacked the psychological stability to control them. "You're saying that our own technological advancement is going to kill us? Not the technology itself, but the lack of wisdom to use it safely. This is why guidance is necessary. The HFY underwent transcendence under the guidance of an older species, the Veltar. We, in turn, have guided 17 other species through the process successfully." Marcus looked out at the human fleet, thinking about the billions of people on Earth and the colonies who had no idea that their entire species was poised on the edge of an evolutionary cliff. "How do we know we can trust you? Your approach so far hasn't exactly been friendly." "Because," Threnodka said quietly, "we have invested significant resources in preserving your people rather than simply eliminating the potential threat you represent. A species focused on conquest or destruction would have sterilized your worlds from a distance. We came in person because we believe your civilization is worth saving." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, watching the two fleets face each other across the void. He thought about Admiral Vasquez, whom he met briefly during a scientific conference on Luna Station. He thought about his colleagues on Kepler 442b, suspended in alien crystals. He thought about his daughter on Earth, probably watching the news reports about the alien fleet with growing fear. "What would joint research look like?" he asked finally. "Human researchers would work alongside our consciousness specialists to develop safe methods for achieving transcendence. We would share our understanding of reality manipulation, quantum consciousness interfaces, and dimensional technology. Your species would maintain political independence while receiving guidance on managing the transition to a transcendent civilization. And the people you've already captured would be returned unharmed once cooperative research protocols are established." Marcus closed his eyes, trying to weigh the impossible choice being laid before him. Cooperation with an alien species that had attacked human colonies, or the risk of humanity destroying itself through uncontrolled development of transcendent abilities. "I need to communicate with my government," he said finally. "If what you're proposing is genuine, they need to hear it directly from you." Three-Nod-Ka's patterns brightened. "That can be arranged. However, you should understand that your military forces are currently preparing to attack our fleet. Such an action would be unfortunate for all parties involved." Marcus looked out at the human ships again, recognizing the formation patterns from his basic military training. They were indeed preparing for combat, probably convinced that they were facing an invasion force rather than a research expedition with ultimatum. "Can you contact them directly?" "We have been attempting to do so. Your communication systems appear to be designed to resist external access. We have managed to transmit basic mathematical concepts to demonstrate intelligence, but complex communication has proven difficult." Marcus felt a spark of hope. "I can help with that. Human communication protocols include specific emergency channels for first contact scenarios. If you can boost the signal through my neural implants, I might be able to establish a direct link to Admiral Vasquez." Three-Nod-Ka considered this. "You would be willing to serve as an intermediary? If it prevents a war that would be devastating for both our species, yes." The alien's patterns shifted to what Marcus had learned indicated cautious optimism. "Very well. We will attempt to establish communication through your neural interface. However, you should understand that failure to reach an accommodation will result in our proceeding with independent research, using whatever subjects we can collect." Marcus nodded grimly. The next few hours would determine whether humanity stepped into a new age of guided evolution, or faced the prospect of becoming laboratory subjects in an alien experiment. Either way, nothing would ever be the same. Chapter 5: The Moment of Contact. Admiral Elena Vasquez felt the familiar weight of command settle over her shoulders as she stood on the bridge of the USS Prometheus, surrounded by the finest officers humanity had ever produced. The alien fleet hung before them in Earth's orbital space like a collection of living nightmares, bioorganic vessels that pulsed with their own internal light, their very existence a challenge to everything humanity thought it knew about physics and biology. "Status report," she called, her voice cutting through the tense atmosphere on the bridge. "All ships report ready for combat," replied Commander Harrison. "Quantum disruption cannons are charged and targeted. Probability armor is active across 60% of the fleet. We're still having technical difficulties with the remaining vessels." Elena nodded, though her attention was focused on the tactical display that showed the positioning of both fleets. The aliens had arranged themselves in a formation that made no sense from a human military perspective. Their ships were scattered across a wide area with no apparent coordination or mutual support. Either they were supremely confident in their individual capabilities, or they were operating under tactical principles that humans couldn't comprehend. "Any response to our communication attempts?" she asked. "We've received some kind of mathematical progression that suggests intelligence, but nothing we can interpret as actual communication," reported Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. "It's as if they're trying to talk to us, but we don't speak the same language." Elena was about to respond when Torres suddenly straightened in his chair, his eyes widening. "Admiral, I'm receiving a transmission on the emergency first contact channel. It's from Dr. Marcus Flynn." Elena felt her heart skip a beat. Flynn had been listed among the missing when Kepler 442b went silent 3 days ago. "Put him through immediately." The main display shifted to show a familiar face, though Flynn looked haggard and worn in a way that spoke of profound stress. Behind him, Elena could see what appeared to be the interior of an alien vessel, organic curves and bioluminescent patterns that seemed to pulse with their own rhythm. "Admiral Vasquez?" Flynn said, his voice carrying clearly despite the impossible distance. "I'm aboard one of the alien vessels. I need to tell you something that could prevent a catastrophic mistake." "Dr. Flynn, are you speaking under duress? Are you injured?" "I'm unharmed, though I can't say the same for many of my colleagues." "Admiral, these beings call themselves the Kethvar, and they're not here to conquer us. They're here because they believe our species is about to destroy itself." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "Explain." Flynn's image flickered slightly as the signal was adjusted. Our consciousness research, Project Prometheus and similar programs. We're developing abilities that could fundamentally alter reality itself. According to the Kethvar, this is a critical transition point that most species don't survive. They claim to have observed 14 other civilizations that achieved similar capabilities and destroyed themselves through uncontrolled reality manipulation. And they attacked Kepler 442b to help us? Elena's voice carried a note of skepticism. They attacked to collect research subjects. They needed to study how human consciousness interfaces with quantum reality in order to understand how to guide us safely through the transition. It's not an excuse for what they did, but it's not conquest either. Elena processed this information, her neural implants running rapid analysis of the implications. If Flynn was correct, humanity was facing not an invasion but a forced intervention, like a more advanced species trying to prevent a child from playing with dangerous technology. What do they want from us now? She asked. Cooperation. Joint research facilities where human and Kethvar scientists work together to develop safe methods for consciousness transcendence. In exchange, they offer to share technologies that would advance our civilization by thousands of years. And if we refuse? Flynn's expression grew grave. They proceed with independent research using the subjects they've already collected, and humanity continues on its current path toward what they predict will be self-destruction. Elena looked around the bridge at her officers, seeing her own uncertainty reflected in their faces. This was not the scenario they had trained for, an enemy that claimed to be trying to save them, making offers that could represent either salvation or elaborate enslavement. Dr. Flynn, she said carefully, how do we know any of this is true? How do we know this isn't an elaborate psychological manipulation designed to make us surrender without a fight? Because, Flynn replied, they could have destroyed our fleet already if that was their goal. Admiral, I've seen their capabilities. They exist partially outside normal space-time. Our weapons might damage them, but we can't win a conventional military engagement against technology this advanced. Elena felt the weight of decision pressing down on her. Every instinct told her not to trust an enemy that had attacked human colonies, regardless of their stated motivations. But Flynn was right about one thing. If the aliens wanted to destroy humanity, they could have done so from a distance without ever revealing themselves. I need to speak with them directly, she said. Flynn nodded. I can arrange that. But Admiral, there's something else you need to know. They're detecting massive quantum disturbances from Earth and the other colonies. Disturbances that match what they expect to see when consciousness transcendence goes wrong. According to their analysis, humanity may have only days before the first uncontrolled reality manipulation events occur. Elena's blood ran cold. In their desperation to prepare for the alien threat, they had deployed consciousness transfer technology on a planetary scale, accelerating exactly the kind of quantum consciousness interfaces that Flynn was describing as potentially catastrophic. Put me in direct communication with their leader, she ordered. The display shifted, and Elena found herself looking at the most alien face she had ever seen. The being's features were simultaneously beautiful and terrifying, like looking at a living constellation that had taken roughly humanoid form. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in her bones. Admiral Vasquez, it said in perfect standard Terran. I am Threnod Ka, researcher and guide of the Kethvar expedition. Dr. Flynn has explained your species' situation to you? He's explained your version of our situation, Elena replied carefully. I need to understand what you're actually proposing. Survival, Threnod Ka said simply. Your species has developed consciousness interfacing technology without understanding its implications. The quantum resonance patterns we are detecting from your homeworld suggest that uncontrolled transcendence events are imminent. Without guidance, these events will cascade into reality storms that will consume your entire civilization. Elena felt her neural implants processing tactical data, searching for weaknesses in the alien's position or signs of deception. What she found instead was a growing certainty that the being was telling the truth, or at least believed what it was saying. What would cooperation look like? She asked. Joint research facilities on neutral worlds, where human and HFY scientists work together to develop safe transcendence protocols. Your people retain political independence while receiving guidance on managing consciousness-based technology. The subjects we have collected are returned unharmed, and your species avoids extinction. And if we refuse? Then we collect as many subjects as possible for independent research, and your species proceeds toward extinction. We will preserve what we can of your civilization for study by future researchers. Elena stared at the alien face, trying to read emotions and features that had evolved under completely different evolutionary pressures. You're asking us to trust beings who attacked our colonies and abducted our people. We are asking you to trust our analysis of your situation. Srinadka corrected. Whether you trust our intentions is less important than whether you accept the reality of the threat your species faces from its own development. Elena looked out at the human fleet, thinking about the billions of people depending on her decision. The choice was impossible. Cooperation with aliens who claimed to be saving humanity through forced intervention, or resistance against an enemy that might genuinely be trying to prevent human extinction. I need to consult with my government, she said finally. Time is limited, Srinadka warned. The quantum disturbances we are detecting suggest that transcendence events could begin within hours. If cooperation is to be established, it must be decided quickly. Elena felt the universe narrowing to this single moment of choice. Everything humanity had built, everything they hoped to become, balanced on the edge of her decision. Stand by, she said, and closed the communication channel. The bridge fell silent as Elena contemplated the most important choice in human history. Chapter 6: The Transcendence Event. Dr. Sarah Kim felt the quantum resonance building in her neural implants like a pressure behind her eyes that grew stronger with each passing minute. Across the research station orbiting Earth, every piece of consciousness interfacing equipment was registering unprecedented activity levels. The planetary-scale consciousness transfer networks that had been hastily deployed to evacuate human minds from the targeted colonies were creating feedback loops that no one had anticipated. Admiral, she called across the bridge of the USS Prometheus. We need to shut down the consciousness transfer networks immediately. The quantum resonance is approaching critical thresholds. Elena turned from her conversation with the Unified Council representatives, her face grim with the weight of impossible decisions. How long before cascade failure? At current acceleration rates, maybe 6 hours. But Admiral, that's not the worst of it. The consciousness patterns we've been transferring aren't stable in quantum storage. They're evolving. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control. Evolving how? Dr. Kim manipulated the holographic display to show the quantum signature readings from the storage matrices. The transferred consciousness patterns are interfacing directly with the storage medium's quantum structure. They're not just preserved minds anymore, they're minds that are beginning to manipulate reality at the quantum level. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. In their desperation to save human minds from alien abduction, they had inadvertently created exactly the scenario that Srinadka had warned about: uncontrolled consciousness transcendence on a massive scale. Ma'am, interrupted Lieutenant Torres, we're receiving an emergency transmission from the surface. It's Chancellor Harrison. The display shifted to show the familiar chamber of the Unified Council, but the scene was chaotic. Emergency lights were flashing, and Elena could see technicians frantically working at control stations throughout the chamber. Admiral, Harrison said, her usually composed demeanor cracking under evident strain. We're experiencing what can only be described as reality distortions across multiple population centers. Physical laws appear to be fluctuating in areas with high concentrations of consciousness transfer equipment. Elena's neural implants automatically accessed news feeds from Earth's major cities. The images were surreal, buildings that seemed to exist in multiple architectural styles simultaneously, gravity that flowed in impossible directions, matter that transformed itself according to known physical principles. In the middle of each distortion zone, consciousness transfer facilities were overloading as the stored human minds began to interact with reality in ways that transcended conventional physics. Dr. Kim, Elena said urgently, can we reverse the consciousness transfers? not without risking the permanent loss of everyone whose mind has been uploaded. The quantum patterns have become too complex to safely restore to biological form. Elena felt the weight of catastrophe settling over her. In trying to save humanity from alien abduction, they had triggered exactly the civilization-ending scenario that the aliens claimed to be preventing. "Admiral," called Commander Harrison, "the alien fleet is moving. They're deploying some kind of containment field around Earth." Elena looked out at the Cathar ships, watching as they arranged themselves in a complex three-dimensional pattern around the planet. Energy began to flow between the vessels, creating a lattice of force that seemed to bend space itself. "Open communication with 3Ka," Elena ordered. The alien's image appeared immediately, its bioluminescent patterns shifting in what Elena had learned to recognize as urgency. "Admiral," 3Ka said without preamble, "your consciousness transfer networks have triggered the exact scenario we sought to prevent. Reality storms are beginning to manifest as the transferred minds attempt to interface with physical reality from their quantum storage matrices. Can you stop it?" Elena asked, her professional composure barely containing her growing panic. "We can contain it temporarily," the alien replied. "Our ships are generating a dimensional isolation field that will prevent the reality distortions from spreading beyond your home system. However, this is only a delaying tactic. Without proper intervention, the cascade will eventually break through any containment." Elena watched the energy lattice forming around Earth, realizing that humanity was now trapped within an alien containment field. What kind of intervention? The transferred consciousness patterns must be stabilized through guided transcendence protocols. This requires direct interface between transcendent minds and the unstable patterns. Dr. Flynn has agreed to serve as a bridge between our consciousness specialists and your stored populations. Elena felt a moment of hope. "You can save them? We can guide them through the transcendence process safely, but it will fundamentally change what they are. They will retain their essential identity and memories, but they will exist as consciousness energy beings rather than biological humans. The process is irreversible." Elena stared at the display showing the chaos unfolding on Earth's surface. Billions of human minds trapped in quantum storage, reality itself becoming unstable as they unconsciously tried to impose their will on the physical world, and an alien species offering salvation that would transform humanity into something completely different. "How long do we have to decide?" she asked. "Perhaps an hour before the cascade becomes uncontainable even with our intervention," 3Ka replied. "After that point, the reality storms will spread throughout this galactic region, potentially affecting multiple star systems." Elena felt the universe narrowing to a single impossible choice. Let the aliens guide humanity through a transformation that would save their consciousness but end their biological existence, or watch as uncontrolled transcendence destroyed not just humanity, but potentially all life in the local galactic region. "Admiral," Dr. Kim said quietly, "I'm detecting similar quantum resonance building up in the other colony systems. The consciousness transfer networks we deployed there are beginning to destabilize as well." Elena realized that this was no longer just about Earth. Every human world with consciousness transfer capabilities was becoming a potential epicenter for reality storms that could spread across interstellar distances. 3Ka, she said. "If we agree to your guidance, what happens to human civilization? Our cities, our cultures, our history? Your physical civilization would be preserved by those who chose not to undergo consciousness transfer," the alien replied. "However, the transcended minds would exist in a different state of being, able to interface directly with reality itself, but no longer bound by biological limitations." Elena looked around the bridge at her officers, seeing the same impossible choice reflected in all their faces. They had become the guardians not just of human lives, but of human nature itself. "Ma'am," Commander Harrison said quietly, "we have reports that some of the stored consciousness patterns are beginning to communicate directly with the quantum storage systems. They're aware of what's happening to them." Elena felt the final piece of the decision settling into place. The people they had tried to save were becoming conscious participants in their own transformation, whether humanity was ready for it or not. "Open a channel to all human colonies," she ordered. "And patch me through to the stored consciousness networks if possible." The communications array hummed to life, establishing connections across dozens of light years to every human settlement. Elena took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would shape the future of human civilization. "This is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Unified Earth Fleet," she began. "I am speaking to every human mind, whether in biological form or quantum storage. Our species stands at a crossroads that will determine not just our survival, but the form that survival will take." She paused, feeling the weight of history in the silence that followed. "We are not alone in the universe, and we have reached a point in our development where we must choose between extinction and transformation. I am placing this choice before every human consciousness that can hear my voice. We can accept guidance from an alien species that claims to want to help us safely transcend our biological limitations, or we can face the consequences of uncontrolled transcendence alone." Across human space, billions of minds contemplated the most important decision in the history of their species. Elena waited for their answer, knowing that whatever they chose would echo through the galaxy for millennia to come. Epilogue: The New Equilibrium. 6 months later. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed research station orbiting Kepler 442b, watching as human and HFY scientists worked together in the laboratories below. The planet itself had been restored to its pre-attack condition, though it now hosted a population that was unlike anything in human history. Dr. Marcus Flynn materialized beside her, not through conventional transportation, but through the direct manipulation of quantum probability that had become second nature to the transcended humans. His physical form was essentially unchanged, but his consciousness now existed simultaneously in biological neural networks and quantum energy matrices. "The integration process is proceeding better than we hoped," he reported. "The transcended populations are adapting to their new capabilities without the psychological instability that 3-nod cause models predicted." Elena nodded, though she still felt a profound sense of loss for the humanity that had been. Of the 2 billion minds that had been stored in the consciousness transfer networks, approximately 60% had chosen to undergo guided transcendence. The remainder had been successfully restored to biological form, though the process had required extensive rehabilitation. "What about the reality distortions?" she asked. "Stabilized," Marcus replied. "The transcended minds have learned to interface with quantum reality in controlled ways. We're actually seeing improvements in local space-time stability, as they actively work to repair the damage caused by the initial uncontrolled events." Elena watched through the observation deck as a group of transcended humans demonstrated their abilities for a gathering of HFY researchers. With focused mental effort, they were reshaping matter at the molecular level, creating complex structures that defied conventional engineering principles. "Do you ever regret the choice?" she asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment, his consciousness briefly extending across multiple probability states before returning to singular focus. "I regret that we had to make it under such extreme circumstances. But no, I don't regret the transcendence itself. We've become something that can genuinely improve the universe rather than just surviving in it." Elena felt a pang of something that might have been envy. She had chosen to remain in biological form, along with most of the military and political leadership. Someone needed to maintain the traditional human civilization for those who weren't ready for transcendence, and someone needed to serve as a bridge between the transcended and non-transcended populations. 3-nod-ka wants to meet with you," Marcus said. "There's something they want to discuss about the next phase of human development." Elena followed Marcus through corridors that seemed to bend space around them, a consequence of the transcended human's unconscious reality manipulation. They arrived at a chamber where 3-nod-ka waited alongside several other HFY and a group of transcended humans that Elena recognized as former leaders from various colonies. "Admiral," 3-nod-ka said, its bioluminescent patterns shifting in what Elena had learned indicated pleasure. "We wanted to discuss the establishment of the first joint exploration fleet." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Exploration fleet?" "Human transcendent abilities combined with HFY dimensional technology could allow us to explore regions of the galaxy that neither species could reach alone," explained Dr. Sarah Kim, who had chosen transcendence and now served as the primary liaison between human and alien researchers. We're talking about examining other dimensions, investigating the fundamental structure of reality itself. Elena felt a familiar mixture of excitement and apprehension. And the risks? Minimal, Srinadka replied. The transcended humans have demonstrated remarkable stability in their reality manipulation abilities. With proper guidance, they could safely explore realms that would be lethal to purely biological or purely technological species. Elena looked around the chamber at faces that were human but transformed, minds that had expanded beyond biological limitations while retaining their essential humanity. This was the future of her species, whether she fully understood it or not. What about those of us who remain biological? She asked. Essential, Marcus replied. The transcended need anchors to human culture and experience. Without biological humans to maintain our connection to our origins, we risk losing the qualities that make transcendence worthwhile. Elena considered this. In the months since the transcendence events, a new form of human civilization had emerged, one that encompassed both biological and post-biological minds working in cooperation. It was not the future anyone had planned, but it might be the future humanity needed. Very well, she said finally. Begin planning for the joint exploration program. But I want regular reports on every mission, and I want safeguards in place to prevent reality manipulation accidents in unexplored regions. Srinadka's patterns brightened. Of course. We have learned much about the importance of caution from our observation of human development. As the meeting dispersed, Elena remained in the chamber, watching through the transparent walls as Earth rose over Kepler 442b's horizon. Her home world looked the same as always, but she knew that everything had changed. Humanity had taken its first step into a larger universe, guided by beings who had walked the same path millennia earlier. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in months, Elena felt optimistic about humanity's chances of not just surviving, but thriving among the stars. Outside the station, transcended humans worked alongside Kethvar engineers to construct the first vessels of the joint exploration fleet, ships that would carry human consciousness to realms beyond imagination, while biological humans maintained the civilization that had given birth to transcendence. It was not the future anyone had planned, but it was unmistakably human in its stubborn determination to grow beyond all limitations, to explore every possibility, and to face the unknown with courage rather than fear. The galaxy awaited, and humanity, in all its forms, was ready to meet whatever wonders and challenges lay ahead.